Hi, I'm Jay Messina, Director of Marketing at Proterra, and today I'm joined by Rick Klotz, CIO of Altra Industrial Motion, and Patrick Osterhaus, Founder and Chief Technology Officer at Proterra. If you're watching and you're interested in transforming your SAP systems to either Cloud, HANA, or S/4HANA, this video interview is for you. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's a pleasure to see you both.
Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah, good seeing you again, Jamie.
So Rick, let's get right into your story. Can you tell me about Altra Industrial Motion and your role there?
Sure. Altra Industrial Motion is a publicly traded manufacturing company, about 1.8 billion in annual sales, and we make all kinds of things that control the motion of different products, or a lot of people have a riding lawnmower or a walk behind mower. That's probably the thing that a lot of our customers relate to. And that thing that stops the blade, that's us. The thing that kills your engine when you get up off the seat, that's us. And we sell to agriculture, material handling, energy generation. We make things that are, about this big around, up to 5 feet in diameter and weigh 80,000 pounds. Everything kind of in between there. So not necessarily a household word, but our customers know us by our brands. And we've grown through acquisition since the company was formed in 2005. And I'm the CIO, have been for about 11 years now.
Tell us a little bit about the SAP systems that you're running today and where.
Okay, so we run pretty much the core SAP Business Suite. No crazy extra stuff like APO or PI, XI, anything like it. It's the core stuff: finance, purchasing, sales order processing, planning, scheduling, kind of the meat of the manufacturing environment. We also run SAP CRM alongside of ERP. And in, late 2015, we became a Proterra customer by moving to the private cloud with your services. And about 4 months after that, we migrated to Suite on HANA. So we're actually using HANA as the back end, but we're still running essentially ECC 6, but with HANA on the back end, both for ERP and for CRM.
Now, recently, you underwent a validation of SAP S/4HANA on Azure. What was the business driver for your decision to evaluate both Azure and SAP S/4HANA?
So we started deploying SAP, or I should say planning for deployment, in September of 2009. And at the point that we considered S4, we had 21 businesses running on SAP, and we asked ourselves, before we implement anybody else on the current configuration, should we stand back, take a look at S4, understand maybe what the similarities and differences are, let's get a feel for the Fiori user interface. And my next thought was, I better call Proterra, because I don't really want to commit to fixed capacity. I don't want to have to figure out how much more am I going to pay for this in the private cloud. I just want to stand up S4. I want to deploy US best practices so that we can do a 12-week project where one of the next businesses could look at that and say, maybe we'd rather go live on that configuration than this legacy configuration the other companies have been running. I would say it was pretty easy. The partnership between Proterra and Microsoft made that pretty short. Actually, I was surprised at how fast that could all happen. We were ready 2 weeks ahead of the start of the 12-week project. And now everything that we did for that 12 weeks is happily snoozing in Microsoft Azure, should we want to light it back up or kind of revisit, what happened in that workshop instance. So that was pretty cool to be able to quickly do something brand new on a fairly cost-effective basis, and then preserve what you did, and then say, okay, that was great, thanks, Proterra and Microsoft, that was awesome. I report to the CFO. He was pretty happy that all that happened with very minimal expense as quickly as it did. And we didn't have to say, oh, well, it'll take us 3 months to be ready. It was very much a quick affirmative back to the business that we can support this process.
Patrick, can you add some detail around the assessment that Rick just shared with us? We use Proterra FlexBridge to assess his source systems for this validation project. Can you share with us how we did that and what about Proterra FlexBridge?
Yeah, glad to. So to add upon what Rick just mentioned, so their ERP system, their production system, we made a copy of that system in Azure. And that was the system that we did the assessment on, being that that's the system that has the best information of the user profile of how the system's used, the transactions being executed, has the sizing that's going to be used ultimately for the production system in Azure. And so within Proterra FlexBridge, it provides an easy way to scan the system, the ERP system, look at the vital information for sizing in Azure, as well as look at the profile of usage and predict what's going to be important to build out in S/4HANA. So the assessment includes the discover phase, which is technical in nature, looks at the sizing, as I mentioned, looks at the data volume, looks at the operating system to ensure that's a good source to do the transformation to S/4HANA, looks at the database to make sure that it can be upgraded if need be or converted into the S/4HANA database HANA. Now, Rick already made the jump, as he mentioned, when we started working with Altra and Rick back in 2015, they made the jump then to HANA. So they had to do an upgrade to HANA 2.0, as well as make sure that the operating system was supported to be a source version for going to HANA and S/4HANA. So that was all performed, the assessment by FlexBridge. And then the next phase of the assessment is called prepare, and that's looking at the functional aspects. So it looks at what's called the simplification items, and that's going to look across all modules. So financials, looking at procurement, looking at HR, if it's running, manufacturing, all those areas are reviewed. And then from that, the work list. So as Rick mentioned, the workshop is basically identifying what work and what teams have to be involved in the functional areas to convert that system to S/4HANA. And one of the really nice features, and Rick mentioned this about snoozing, is when that system, this rehearsal system, we call it, when that test system is being not used, you can just snooze it, you can put it to sleep and not incur those charges over time. So when the system project's ready to be picked up, the system's ready to restart, we can, like Rip Van Winkle, wake it up and it's ready to run again. So the assessment can be done within a few days, and then the review of the workshop usually takes a day with Rick's team to go through all the results. And then that's going to give the full plan of what's going to be taken to go to S4.
Rick, you mentioned that there was a 12-week pilot. You had a 12-week sandbox environment. Can you talk through what that experience was using SAP S/4HANA on Azure during that 12 weeks?
Sure. I think, as Patrick said, our primary focus was let's look at the functional aspects of S4, but we also wanted to kind of kick the tires of how does this perform in Azure. So now it's a little further away from us. It's not quite on our private network. How does it perform, and how does it look to the end user? Right, so they fire up their SAP GUI, or they fire up a Fiori tile, and the feedback we got was it seems it's normal. It's in fact, in some cases it almost seemed like it was a little bit faster. So that was maybe a small check mark in the box of if you run SAP in the Azure cloud, what's the user experience going to be? But we really didn't see any cause for concern of, having this application running in Azure, and will people be concerned that it's slower or that any of their functionality is missing. It felt very, very familiar and functional, and the performance was as good, if not a little bit better. It was really the first time we took the SAP application itself and showed it to people that were at live sites, as well as people that were thinking about making the journey to SAP, to see how you could use it out of the box. And then start asking yourself, well, couldn't you plan like that? Couldn't you manage your business like this? Couldn't you run these standard reports to get visibility? So I think it was a bit of a sneaky proposition, but to show people the latest and greatest S4 with best practices and walk them through the things that they would do. Some of our live sites were actually more excited to think about, well, how fast could we get to S4? Because that's some pretty interesting stuff. So the primary mission was the businesses that weren't yet on SAP to see S4, but we had a number of people from the live sites that could see it and were sort of intrigued by what they could do with it.
Excellent. So now that you've been able to explore the functionality, explore Azure as opposed to a private cloud environment, what's next for Altra?
Yeah, so I call it sort of our wandering in the desert period, right? We finished the 12-week evaluation, and then we did some work actually with Proterra. We did some work with Microsoft saying, so how do we get from here to there? You have 21 businesses running on the current landscape. If we start new projects with people on S4, we really don't want to have a duplicate in another 3-tier landscape. You're over here, the new guys are over here. And we really, I think, work closely with Proterra, with Patrick and others to think about how could we sort of start with S4 while migrating as is to end up in the same place. Ultimately, we decided that was a pretty complicated proposition, and kind of stepped back and said, okay, for right now, as much as we liked what we saw in S4, let's focus on the hosting, kind of getting ourselves away from this fixed capacity, fixed cost kind of model in the private cloud. As I said earlier, some of the things we saw, because we are kind of a Microsoft shop, moving the data warehouse, moving some of the BI capability to the Azure cloud. We already have workload in the Azure cloud. Wait a second, that's a better proposition for us than worrying about exactly when we're going to get to S4 right now. So I think moving SAP to Azure is in focus. We're trying to get the timing right. And again, what's interesting in this case is to see what Altra is asking for. What I'll say Microsoft is encouraging is more workload moving to Azure, and how that fits with Proterra is it's complementary for all three of us. We all get something from making that journey. We get some simplification. To me, one of the biggest benefits is and I'm oversimplifying, but the dial. Now I can just call Proterra and say, hey, I need some more horsepower. We're going to put another 100 users on SAP, and Patrick just reaches behind him and he turns the light fixture, and all of a sudden I have more. If we start to do more exhaustive workflow or background processing, it's going to be so much easier for us to adjust than you're kind of out of HANA appliance capacity, so we're going to have to refresh. It's just so much less flexible. that doesn't sound right. It is less flexible than moving to Azure. And then we started thinking kind of internally about what do we need to do for all these future projects, right? So I need a copy of production. I need a new sandbox, and I need it in 3 weeks. And I'm only going to use it for the next project, and then I'm going to destroy it. But now what I need is a test client for end user training, but I only need that for 3 weeks. We just see all these possibilities for spinning different things up that makes sense in the context of a project, and then just blow them up, just go away. So I'll spend a little bit of money for a while, serve the purpose, then destroy it. It's a pretty good situation to be in as a CIO, to have that much flexibility.
It sounds like the flexibility, the scalability, and the opportunity for innovation is tenfold by moving to Azure.
Right, right. And I get a free T-shirt from Microsoft. Just so far, I haven't got, no coffee mugs, no T-shirts, but I am pretty amazed at the kind of that three-way partnership between Altra, Proterra, and Microsoft. And we've had multiple joint meetings where we've pretty much just, we rip the curtains down and we talk about, what do I want? What does Microsoft bring? And how can Proterra help us? Is been very transparent, working together, trying to find the right path. I think that's pretty amazing.
Patrick, I have a question for you based on what Rick just shared with us. Even for someone, an organization, SAP-centric organization, who's already running on private cloud, it sounds like a Proterra FlexBridge assessment is critical if they were going to move, not just an upgrade in their SAP applications, but also moving to a different cloud provider.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Rick alluded to this with how you described the approach, the approach being that it started with looking at the assessment with S/4HANA, and the move to that within the SAP application, the upgrade and conversion from their existing 1503 system. Yet where I think it transmuted into is the journey into Azure, looking at an as-is move first, and then going to S/4HANA. And that is a journey that we see a lot more customers adopting. So customers know they want to get to S/4, they're not certain how soon they'll make the jump, and what kind of value can they immediately capture going to Azure. And so that's an area that we've been focusing a lot of. If you're in a private cloud, for years we provided solutions around private cloud. Those providers, or if you're an on-premise customer today, you're looking at, maybe in best case 3 years, probably more realistic is about a 5-year refresh hardware cycle. As Rick mentioned, he was also in the hardware business and in the data center business, and worried about cycling out servers. And so it's even if you have these environments today and you have a good solution, you've been able to keep uptimes and your SLAs, where they need to be. Still, at that next hardware refresh, does it make sense for you to look at what cloud can provide? And one of the most lovely ideas is the scalability, as Rick mentioned, the elasticity that you can take systems capacity up and down. You can snooze them. This is great. I think my most favorite feature of cloud isn't often talked about, and it's something I think you see once you've lived in it for a few months, few years, and that basically you can think of every year you can get new servers, and that's where I go back to the hardware life cycle. That your refresh cycle was about every 3 years in the past. Now I think it can be every year, so you're going to get more compute every year for a cheaper, less expensive price, and it's the beauty of how the cloud's built, just by the scale of it, and so it's a great model. So I think if you have a good model today, you're in a private cloud, you're on premise, it's worth looking, even if it's not your SAP systems initially, looking at dipping your toe into the Azure pool and seeing what you can move now. And FlexBridge can help with that assessment, looking at the best way, fastest, least expensive, and least risk.
And Rick, I have one last question for you. For anybody who is considering a move to Azure or to upgrade their systems, what would you say to them about the entire experience that you've had with Proterra and Microsoft?
I think I would say that we've run some small experiments, right? So we're a Microsoft customer, we're an Office 365 customer. We run, if it has a Microsoft logo, if it makes sense, it's part of our agreement with Microsoft. We try to use that before we run out and buy all kinds of other stuff or subscribe for other services. And I think Azure is a natural extension of that. And when you realize how much time you won't spend configuring hardware and installing things, and things always stop running in the middle of the night and servers crash, and a lot of that headache is gone, your Microsoft people can now focus on delivering more value with the tools they give you, because Azure kind of takes care of a lot of that complexity for you.
Final words from either of you about the Altra Industrial Motion assessment on Azure, moving to SAP S for HANA. Any final words for our audience members?
We've been with Proterra now for quite a while, right? And we were with another provider for 6 years before we moved to Proterra. And I would say of all the technology partners that we work with, Proterra is the best at listening to where we are and what we're trying to do. They react very quickly, and even when it's not their fault, which that's the most important thing to me, even when it's not Proterra's responsibility that I have a problem, I don't ever hear, well, why don't you figure that out and call us back. It's they roll their sleeves up and they try to help, and they try to help us get through whatever struggle we're having, or an unexpected event or problem. They're religious about executing monthly kind of status calls with us. How are things in the landscape? What's performance? Here's the patches you're missing. Here are the things that you should do. It's a cadence that a lot of my other suppliers can't match. So it just continues to send the right message to us that we're aligned with a great partner, and hopefully that continues for a long time.
And thank you for the kind words on our team. I'd like to also thank you for your continued commitment to excellence and innovation, because you guys were an early pioneer of looking at some of these new cloud technologies and using it within your organization. And I always love when our teams talk with each other. We learn a lot, what's working, technologies that we should look to adopt for other customers. So it's been very, very beneficial for our team. And we just all love working with your team. It's a great group of people, and always love talking to you personally with your great sense of humor. So thank you for that.
Rick Klotz, CIO of Altra Industrial Motion, and Patrick Osterhaus, founder and CTO of Proterra. Gentlemen, thank you for your time today. All of you watching and are on your journey to becoming an intelligent enterprise, please visit proterra.com for more information. Thank you.